Hello and a very warm welcome to this insightful and special episode of your favorite auto show. This is Ignition. I'm your host Rishabh Matharu, and this week we had plans to bring you the latest scoop on the Ford Figo hatchback amongst other things, but we've decided to turn our attention to a topic that's been hotly discussed in the United States, in Europe and in India as well. Of course, we're talking about Volkswagen's involvement in the emission scandal in the United States. And of course, to shed some light on that and discuss some pertinent questions, we've got our editor-in-chief Adil with us. Hi Adil, how are you doing today?
Very good.
Now Adil, there's been a lot of media speculation, a lot of articles on social media, a lot of fiction, a lot of fact. But for the layman, how would you describe what is this whole scandal about?
Okay, let's understand one thing, that every car sold anywhere in the world is subject to emission regulations. And there are various grades of emission regulations. We in India still BS3, BS4 comes in. Abroad we have already got Euro 6 and they are already making plans for Euro 7, Euro 8, everything is mandated. Same way in the USA. So in the USA, when any car is given for certification for sale on the showrooms in the country, you have to go through to see to it that it meets the mandated emission regulations. Volkswagen had done its cars, it is really pushing diesel through, but what was happening is, since the last 3-4 years, they had been selling Golfs, Jettas, Audis, etc. fitted with the EA 189 engine in both 1.6 and 2 liter capacities. Those engines were meeting the American NOx regulations when they were tested in the laboratory on the dynamometer. The key thing was that the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency of the USA, which is the watchdog body, did ask a specialized consultancy to verify a lot of cars, not just the Volkswagen cars, but a lot of cars. And in that they found that there was a defeat device to see to it that on the test bed, the car engines were below the maximum levels or the minimum levels for whatever was permitted. But once the same thing went out on the road in real world conditions, the cars began to emit more NOx compared to what they found on the test bed. So, and this actually speaking was done by the West Virginia University's Automotive Emissions Department. So academia, very, very qualified, unimpeachable records, and they tested a couple of Volkswagen cars along with a BMW as well, and they found the Volkswagen cars really not meeting or confirming with the emission standards required. So that is where they found there was this algorithm in the ECU which sensed the sort of seat pressure, steering inputs, etc. of being driven on a road vis-a-vis none of those things being there on a dynamometer. And so it adjusted the exact engine management system to such a manner so that it always delivered NOx within the permissible levels and not more, whereas it was contrary on the road. So that is what was caught out, and this emissions defeat device is really now the bugbear of Volkswagen.
It's obviously blown up into quite a big scandal because there are millions of cars involved across the world.
Sure.
How do you think this is going to work
I
out for
think
Volkswagen?
first and foremost, I think there's a little bit of arrogance in play over here. Arrogance of technological might from Volkswagen's end. They were informed about this in the first quarter of 2014 that this is what has happened. So can you please understand, if we can, what you call, get to grips about why this sort of a thing is happening, and there's a dissonance between the test bed and the real world. I think Volkswagen did not take it to heed, and they said, oh, by the by, we'll look at it, they'll dump that thing down. It never happened. Then there were some red flags within the company also, but I don't think the management really cared too much until, in a very nondescript manner over the last 5-6 months, Volkswagen started asking buyers, the people who had bought their Jettas and Golfs and whatnot, to come in for some correction on their cars. But again, it was not a recall, it was just a suggestive thing. Then I think the EPA said enough is enough and they blew the lid off.
Adil, just to come back to that defeat device that we were talking about earlier, you've talked a little bit about what it actually does, but what kind of results came out that was so shocking?
The NOx, whatever the permitted NOx levels on the test bed, which the engines definitely met very well, were tenfold more when they went out on the real world conditions. So that in essence is absolute cheating. And again, we have seen there is so much of stake with billions of dollars worth of investments done in engine plants, in research and development, in market share, etc. So manufacturers do try to take these sort of shortcuts. They have got a lot of good brains, but sometimes they also have smarter brains who can be cleverer than half. But at the same time, the guys who are really protective of the environment, they also have got a lot of smart thought, analytical thought, and I think this smart analytical thought really caught Volkswagen at its worst, actually speaking.
So do you think that whoever this component manufacturers who has built this...
It's not component. Again, this is a very good question, because it is very easy for big manufacturers to pin the blame on component manufacturers. Component manufacturers might have supplied the hardware, but it's the algorithm which really used to what you call do the trick and adjust the power torque curves and the way the combustion process was there. So I think that I don't think we can push the blame on to a component manufacturer. Bosch does supply even till today all the fuel injection and the emission regulation stuff for, but even Bosch had red flagged this aspect more than a year ago.
Of course, in reaction to this scandal, we've seen a lot of heads roll at Volkswagen, but do you think that they've done enough, and what should they do to fix this?
First and foremost, they need to be humble. I think they've been put in such a manner that humility has followed rather quickly. And Martin Winterkorn himself said that he is disgusted. Well, any and everyone should be disgusted and also really angry that this was allowed to happen, because it's not just about Volkswagen. Let's not make this into a diesel versus petrol debate, because this was an issue where the lethargy and the arrogance, again I use the word arrogance, in a manner in which the technological might of Volkswagen refused to accept that, because in the same test the BMW engine passed with no hassles, and that was also diesel. So let's not make it into a diesel versus petrol issue. So I think heads have got to roll, but more than that, you need to have accountability. Why? You have to also know why and where and how did it happen, who what you call pushed the buttons to ram this thing through. So just mere suspension of key people, Martin Winterkorn resigning as a moral high ground, I think we need to what you call Volkswagen needs to introspect and get really to the hub of the problem.
Well, so there you have it, Adil saying that Volkswagen really needs to introspect and get down to the root of the matter. Of course, on that note, we'll take a short break here on ZEEGNITION. When we come back, lots more on the scandal.